Hello everyone and welcome back to Nintendo Everything Refresh, the weekly show where we keep you apprised as to what is new and exciting in the world of Nintendo. I'm your host Nick Serpa and today we are joined by the whole gang. We have got Luiz Estrella.
Hey everyone.
We've got Nicolas Shade.
Hello everyone.
And we have got Dennis Gagliardato.
Hello, hello.
Dennis, no cheating. What episode is this? Do you know off the top of your head?
Oh my God, this is. I want to say I know. No, hold on, stop. I think it's 23, and I'll say why I think it's 23 because I remember the last time I was here, we talked about popping champagne because it was 21, and I remember I missed the last one due to unfortunate circumstances.
Okay.
So that
you
was
passed
22.
The test.
So my math skills would, kind of come to the conclusion that it is 23. So.
Okay, well, you passed, so you can stay on the podcast, so good job, Dennis.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Oh my God, thank God he didn't ask it me.
It was a close call. All right, yeah. So we've got a lot to talk about this week. There was this little thing called Gamescom that happened this last week, so there's quite a bit of news around that. And on top of that, we also had a Nintendo Treehouse Live that came out of nowhere. Nintendo just likes to pop those in every now and then to give us a more in-depth look at some games. We're going to talk about Splatoon 3. That was one of the games they showed off, and there's a lot to talk about with that. Harvestella, a bunch of Gamescom games, obviously. And then in the back half of the show, we got some news surrounding DRM, which is, if you don't know what it is, you're about to find out. and then we've got my favorite news story of the week, all about our good friend Sakurai, the inventor of Kirby and Smash, and his new YouTube channel. We're going to give you a deep dive into that. But
went to school with that
start. Oh, did you?
I did. Yeah, went to school with Sakurai. Spent many lunches together. Speaking about
college
20 years older than me.
That's right. They're just shooting some hoops.
Yeah. Very cool. All right. Well, Dennis will give us all the detailed information about Sakurai's secret college stories.
That's right.
All right, so let's start off with this Nintendo Treehouse Live that kind of came out of nowhere this week. I didn't think we were going to see a lot more of Splatoon 3, considering how close we are to the game's release, but no, Nintendo decided to give us not one, but two segments of all about Splatoon 3. It was, I think the big focus really was that they showed off a little bit more of the single-player campaign. Did you guys check this out? I want to kind of just gather people's thoughts over what we saw here.
I watched it, and I have to say, because I think it was in the last episode or a couple of, I don't know. I know that I said that I wasn't very excited for the single player campaign on Splatoon 3 because I had a feeling that
you did say that.
with the what we saw in the direct. I was not. It looked very similar to the campaign on Splatoon 2, but I have to say, after watching the Treehouse, I'm convinced. I'm pretty excited to play the single player. I love the ideas. I think the level design, at least in the levels that they show us, it looked great. There was this on rails level with the bow. And like it was with the bow, and he had to shoot this stuff on the level, and it just looked very good. It looks fun. It looks very exciting, and it seems that they are taking some notes from the Octo Expansion DLC. The way that each level starts, you choose one of the 3 weapons, and it's really similar. If you play the Octo Expansion, you know what I'm talking about. So I'm seeing a clear evolution, and now I must say I'm more excited for the game in an overall sense because the single player experience was kind of a big deal for me because I really liked the past ones, but I was hoping to see a little bit more with this one, and yeah, in that sense the Treehouse was great for me.
Nintendo heard you talking and we're like, ooh, we gotta show him.
Yeah. I mean,
oh crap!
those ninjas are always.
Let's do Treehouse. Yeah. Honestly, like I for me personally, it's a little too soon. I think for me to like, I don't think I'll have a really firm opinion about the campaign until I've played it. But I will say that this trailer definitely made me more excited about picking it up. I love just like the premise of it. It all just seems very mysterious. Yeah, I'm always down for a big domed city in my fiction. I know that sounds weird, but some of like the best like stories, like science fiction stories and stuff that I've read, are like where people are like trapped in this big dome city. I'm sure that's just like part of the campaign, but I was like, oh, that's a cool setting. It seems like they're trying to really like up the like the environmental diversity, you know, like between what we saw in the treehouse and the desert stages we've seen and other trailers. It looks like there's going to be a lot more variety, which I think is really what they need if they're trying to sell this as a full-on sequel. Dennis, what about you? What did you think of this new Splatoon 3, I guess, reveal that we got?
I mean, I thought it looked great. I think, you know, especially with the world premiere test that just happened just a few days ago, or actually literally yesterday, at the time of this recording.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks fantastic. It's like Luis was saying, you know, the single player content is a big deal. I know that's not as much of an emphasis on Splatoon, and it's certainly not going to be why Splatoon lasts as long as it does. Obviously, the multiplayer content is what's going to keep it going because of the live service methods that they do to Splatoon, and how they keep that in, you know, engagement with the fans, and, you know, with the Splatfests and all the new introductions that they do, especially with the DLC content that's planned for the future. But yeah, no, I mean, it looked absolutely great to me. It looked super fluid, and then, you know, just judging from the world premiere that I got to play a little bit of, I mean, that hub in particular is fantastic. I love the hub.
It's
you
much
know, because,
bigger than Splatoon 2
yeah, much
is.
bigger, which is great because the hubs I always felt, not so much in Splatoon 1, but in Splatoon 2, I felt claustrophobic in that hub. And, you know, and I'm not someone who is claustrophobic, but every time I was in that hub, I was like, get me out of here. Because it was too cramped. It was too cramped, and it just felt like a glorified menu is what it was, which I guess, to be fair, is what most hubs are, really. They kind of give that more... They want to build a more interactive version of, like, you know, let's make a store for the options menu. Let's make a store for, you know, your inventory, you know, so on and so forth, you know. But in Splatoon 1, for those that played it on Wii U, you know, again, it was a small hub, but it was wide, at least, and it wasn't so narrow like it was in Splatoon 2, so there was, like, breathing room. But in Splatoon 2, it really bothered me. So I was, you know, I just spent, I don't even know how long, walking around the Splatoon 3 hub, and I fell in love with it. I thought it was fantastic. The aesthetic of it is beautiful. Yeah, I mean, I think this will be... I don't want to say return to form because Splatoon's been consistent throughout, but at the very least, it's going to be, I think, a bigger step than most are expecting, and I hope I'm not wrong. I hope I don't jinx that because, you know, Splatoon 2 kind of gave off those same vibes, and then you know, Splatoon 2 ultimately disappointed me. I didn't think it was a bad game, but I still think it's a fantastic game, but it wasn't sequel worthy. You know, it wasn't worthy of that too. Hopefully this will be, you know, the hat trick, if you will, since it's Splatoon 3. So, but yeah, we'll see.
Nicolas, what about you? So just a quick note. I think we all played the Splatfest over the weekend. And if you chose Team Rock like I did, congratulations. You are obviously the best.
Which one was that one? Was that Shiver, Fry, or Big Man? Who was that?
Shiver.
Yeah, it was Shiver.
Oh, Rock was Shiver?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, I had to go with Big Man.
Kind of fits with what we've seen of her personality, I will say.
It was the red thing, I think.
Shiver Rock was blue. Scissors Big Man was red.
Oh, okay.
I know that because I let Big Man down.
Oh, no. How dare you, Nicolas? Disappointed Big Man. What do you think, Nicolas? You got hands-on with the game. You checked out a little bit of the treehouse. Yep. How are you feeling now that we've seen more of it?
So yeah, from the treehouse, most of my impressions are of the single player because, well, the multiplayer stuff they showed was neat. It was mostly like, hey, these stages and weapons and stuff exist, and we kind of already knew that. But I think, like pretty much everyone else, it was really nice seeing that the single player implemented a lot of Akko expansion features in terms of just, you know, being able to select specific weapons, which means that the stages are also going to be tailored to those specific weapons, which means more specific design and just everything in general about that definitely makes me more excited because it's, like Luis said, it's an evolution. It's a step in the right direction that Octo Expansion took and that this is kind of revisiting. It also makes me wonder what exactly this game's DLC is going to entail, because I don't think it will literally just be the Octo Expansion formula again, and that makes me wonder what they're going to do with that. But anyway, speaking for the Splatfest stuff, I mean, I was really pleased with it. Honestly, everything about the game just felt really nice. Like Dennis said, the hub was genuinely impressive. It felt like you could get lost in it, and that was a great feeling. Everything about the multiplayer felt spot on. The new lobby was really fun. Being able to see your friends or other players around, just moving around the lobby between matches is really just... It's a simple little thing, right? Like, you wouldn't think it necessarily adds much, but just being able to, like, interact...
difference.
Yeah, like, just being able to, like, you know, squid bag with your friends and whatnot. It's nice. It's a nice little feeling. The new maps all felt great. Personally, I really liked them. The weapons felt great. The new specials felt great. The only part that I was personally not a huge fond of was the new tricolor turf wars, which arguably is also because I was on the team that lost those. Yeah, just this is something that's definitely going to be, I think, contentious. I think I've generally seen more people not be super happy with it than be super pleased with it. But as a defender, like part of the defending team, I guess, they're really tough. Like, they are heavily skewed against the defending team, it feels. And it felt kind of unwarranted in that regard, given that at halftime, the defending team was in the lead by like 1% or 2%. And then by the end, I think in most regions, they didn't end up winning any category, which was a bit of a shame. I mean, in spite of this, you know, congrats to the winning teams. Obviously, they just played well. So, like, no shame to them. But it does make me wonder if maybe they're going to, at some point, rebalance that mode, because it felt like a bit much to handle. And I guess maybe we're going to need a few more Splatfests to be able to actually fully determine if the mode is maybe skewed a little bit too much against the defending team. But it does make me slightly concerned about that mode in particular. But then again, that's also just such a minimal portion of the game. It's like a 6-hour segment of what is probably going to be like a once-a-month event, that it's not something that genuinely deters me from it. And I also think that, like, Splatoon 2 got a pretty big overhaul in terms of how the points were counted for the Splatfest, like, halfway through its life. So I think that if there's genuinely some kind of balance issue with the Splatfests, the devs will probably address it at some point anyways.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see them tweak some numbers around for sure. I personally, I had a lot of fun with the three-way turf battles. I mean, granted, you know, I wasn't on the team that had to defend, but it felt really exciting, you know, especially considering even if you're not the defending team, you know, just having a team of 2 totally changes the dynamic versus a traditional turf war battle. And even though I wasn't defending anything, really, it was still a good challenge. I mean, you have a lot more ground to cover with just 2 people, and we found ourselves getting overwhelmed pretty easily. So I really enjoyed that dynamic. And I'll just say, just, you know, probably just the thing that I really just enjoyed the most about this game. Honestly, I think this is one of the best looking games on the Switch that I've seen in quite a while. I mean, I don't know what it is. I mean, obviously it's just a really colorful game, and I was playing on the OLED Switch, so it just really popped in that way.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, the game runs like butter. It looks just, everything looks sharp and clean, and the animations are all just phenomenal. It feels like a game that is truly, you know, takes that Nintendo polish and really runs with it.
Yeah, I think they are really used to the engine at this point, so they can really bring it to another level on the Switch. I also played the Splatfest Premiere. I I know that I had a lot of fun because as soon as it ended, I wanted to play more. I played to the final moments. I got the impression that when I entered into the battle, the connection felt even better than Splatoon 2, even though I didn't have a lot of issues with Splatoon 2, but it felt really good. However, in some of the final moments, I was getting a message that there were not enough players, which is kind of weird because I'm pretty sure there were enough players, but I don't know what was going on. I got that message for a couple of minutes. But
were you Team Paper?
No, I was Team Rock.
Okay. Because I know that some Team Paper people had problems because I think that wasn't a super popular team, so they had far less players to fill out the matches. But
I think I remember hearing that Nintendo was using a new. Nintendo has a new in-house server system, and Splatoon 3 is one of their. There's a couple games that have used it, Monster Hunter Rise and Pokemon Legends Arceus, but I think that might be why you were noticing some improvements, Luis, because I've heard good things about, how Monster Hunter performs online and all that. So I'm glad to hear that it's overall an improvement from Splatoon 2.
Yeah. I think when the game was actually playing, it felt really, really smooth. Like, I couldn't tell that was actually playing online, because it was basically zero lag and stuff like that. But overall, I think it I'm way more excited for the game right now. I think I will end up buying on day one, which was something that a couple of days before I would had not said. But after the World Premiere and the Treehouse, I think I'll probably buy this. Now we have a full Splatoon team here on the podcast, right? So we could we could try to play.
Yeah, actually, that's true. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm kind of with you, Luis. I wasn't planning on picking this up on day one. I didn't play the first Splatoon, and I only ever played a little bit of Splatoon 2 back when they were like running the network tests for all that. Neither of those games really grabbed me, but there's something about this one that when I was playing it, I was having fun the whole time, and I was like. And yeah, I was wanting to play more when it was over. So I might be right there with you guys for this one.
Yeah. Just a question for you guys. Did you guys got to test the new weapons, the bow, and I don't know the name of the other one. I call it the sword.
The Splatana, yeah.
Yeah, I loved both of them. I really liked the new ones.
Yeah, I didn't test the Splatana too much. I tried the bow a little bit. Personally, I tried the 52 gal because that was the weapon I used a lot in Splatoon 1 and that I used a little bit in Splatoon 2. And this made me realize why I fell in love with it with Splatoon 1 because it feels so good.
I didn't play around with the new weapons too much, but everything I did play with, everything felt just so tactile and just really satisfying to use. All right, well, that was just one of the games, believe it or not, Splatoon 3. That was just one of the games that was shown off during this whole Treehouse thing, which is really what we were planning on talking about. They also showed off Harvestella, which we saw a good chunk of it. I'll be honest, I didn't watch the whole thing because I'm pretty much sold on the premise of that game. But at least in terms of what I did see in terms of the gameplay, they were playing on a Switch, and it looked a little rough around the edges. I was hoping with this being a Switch console exclusive that it would look and run a little bit better in action. And maybe it was just because it was on a stream. These games always look better when played on actual hardware. But that was my big concern, actually. I was actually a little less confident in the game after seeing it in action. I don't know about you. Dennis, I know you were excited for Harvestella.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Has that increased, decreased after seeing this Treehouse?
No, I would say we're still looking at about the same amount of excitement for it. It didn't really increase, but it certainly didn't decrease either, which was really all I can ask for. Especially when my excitement's already so high. It's one thing to go even higher, which is great, because then it's like, oh my god, this is gonna be my game of the year, which is not. But but it could reach that point of excitement. But at least it doesn't go down, which is always typically seems to be par for the course as of late. Anyways, where as we get closer, I'm like, man, like it's I don't know. The more we see of it, the less I was excited for. But no, this still looks Harvestella still looks great. It looks consistent. To echo what you said though, you're right in that I think there are some improvements to be made on the Switch, because when we initially saw those screenshots, and I knew they were PC screenshots when they first announced Harvestella was coming to Switch, because first of all, the resolution of those screenshots were all in 4K. Right? Like if you looked at the dimensions, those were all
Oh, I thought it was on the
dimensions.
Switch
Switch
Pro.
2 confirmed.
If only. No. So I knew it wasn't going to look that good. However, I mean, it definitely looks better than I thought it would. I mean, I was honestly thinking that
Okay.
it was going to look maybe half that good. And it exceeded those expectations at least. Now, do I think it could look better between now and then? Sure. But I'm not so much concerned about the visuals as I am about the frame rate, because watching it now, actually, as we're speaking, it's the frame rate could be better, and that's always the most important thing to me. I think is performance more so than visuals, because you can look as pretty as you want, but like if I can't play you, what's the point?
Yeah.
But Harvestella, I mean, visually looks already at a good point to me on Switch, so I'm not too concerned about that. But it does look a little choppy from the gameplay that we saw at Treehouse Live. Now, again, we're still months away, so obviously performance improvements can happen. But yeah, I mean,
I think the art direction. I think the art direction is really pulling a lot of weight with this game. I mean,
Yeah.
the setting itself, I think, looks phenomenal.
It does,
It
yeah.
has a ton of charm and personality, and like that's a world that I mean, I don't. I think you also, Dennis, you played a little bit of Rune Factory 5 earlier this year.
Oh yeah,
And I don't know
absolutely.
about
Yeah.
you, but I was really disappointed by that game.
Yeah.
The more I think back about it, I was a little lukewarm on it when I played it, but I still gave it a positive review overall.
Yeah.
But the more I kind of dug into it, I was like, oh, this is really not kind of hitting the highs that I hoped it would. But
Right.
Harvestella looks like it might be filling that void a little bit for me. I don't know.
Yeah. Harvestella definitely looks like it's because the thing is Square Enix has that RPG prowess, right? They don't really dabble too much in like farming stuff, but like so long as they can get the basics down, I think we can have an incredible package of both a great RPG and a great farming sim here that can really put itself as on a new throne that is or dethrone the likes of what's typically up there, right? On like the Mount Rushmore of farming sims, which is what it usually Rune Factory, usually Story of Seasons, right? So I think you can absolutely dethrone them with with a game like this. But yeah, I mean, it all comes down to performance for me. So I just wanted to just run a little bit better. That's why like I'm kind of leaning more towards picking up a PC copy of the game, even though I know for a fact it would be a phenomenal Switch game. But yeah, sometimes it just
Gotta make those trade-offs. Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm willing to risk portability for the sake of having the most optimal
Yeah.
experience, because this game I do believe can truly like blow me away. If it ends up living to those expectations of not only being a great RPG but a fantastic farming sim on top of that. And they need to balance it well too, because I don't like games that they give you both, because there's a lot of games that we've seen over the last couple of years that give you both RPG elements and farming elements. However, they tend to favor one or the other. They never balance them particularly well. And I'm
I think
hoping,
that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just hoping that this at least gives me a solid balance. Yeah.
Luiz, Nicolas, we kind of got to move on to our next topic, but do you guys have any quick thoughts about what we saw of Harvestella?
I think I'm generally what Dennis just mentioned about the balance between both sides. I think that's probably where I'm at in terms of like what I am somewhat concerned about. Just because I think the RPG elements they showed were somewhat interesting. You have some more complexity in terms of job changes and certain mechanics, like a brake mechanic, but it still kind of looked like I guess the combat was a little repetitive. It was still a lot of single strikes and then 1 or 2 special moves that are on a cooldown, and that just seemed a little... It didn't quite seem like enough complexity to carry that aspect of the game. I mean, this is still... The preview we were shown was still from a pretty early portion of the game, so it's probably not representative of exactly how complex it will be by the end. But that did kind of make me question a little, like, I hope this will get a little bit more interesting.
Yeah. No, I think it's fair to be a little bit apprehensive at this stage still. Louise, what about you? Any closing thoughts about what we've seen from Harvestella?
Not much. I think you guys talked about most of the stuff. I'm not a huge guy in farming sims, so I can't judge much of the game on this. I see what you talked about the visuals. I think they could be a little bit better, but at the same time, I think this is mostly what we can expect from those not so high budget JRPGs. It looks to me like Bravely Default, but the camera is way closer, so we can see more of the low poly stuff. But overall, I think, I don't know, it's really a game that I'm not super interested in, even though I see what they are trying to do here, and I find the concept itself interesting.
Yeah, well, hey, you know what? That is A-okay. Because these games are a massive time sink usually anyways. And if you know, one less to cross off the list is probably better for mental health anyways. All right, let's talk a little bit about Gamescom. So Gamescom, for those who aren't aware, is a big German gaming expo that has been a thing for a while now, but has gotten even bigger over the past few years. With Jeff Keighley kind of taking over their big opening night show. And they tend to reveal a lot of games on this opening night show. There were some really great games that were shown off this year. Unfortunately, most of them are not coming to Switch. A lot of them were very next-gen games or very kind of early proof-of-concept things. Lots of big, CGI, cinematic trailers. One of the big complaints I heard is people said, there's not enough gameplay, and I kind of agree with that, but still some good stuff shown off. But I did want to highlight a few games that were shown off for the Switch, not necessarily all during that stream exclusively, but just kind of during and adjacent to the event. I think the big one, and this one had kind of been teased previously, and then eventually we got a leak. This one is new Tales from the Borderlands. Now, I've got to say, I played the original Tales from the Borderlands, which was a Telltale game, and I think it's some of their best work. This is coming from someone who isn't enjoys the first person shooting of the mainline Borderlands games, but they're not my favorite games ever. But Tales from the Borderlands just had me hooked start to finish. It's an immensely funny game. They do a great job building this world and these characters, and they showed off the sequel coming really soon, October 21st, and I was blown away, honestly. I think it looks phenomenal. Do we have any fans of the Telltale style kind of choose your own adventure games here?
I love the Telltale stuff.
I'll take either.
I love the Telltale stuff very, very much. I've been a big fan of it since the Walking Dead series. Ever since season 1, I've been addicted to just about anything really that they put out. But you know what's funny though is Tales of the Borderlands is actually one of the few that I have not played from Telltale though. Yeah.
You owe it to yourself. I think if you're a fan of their games, it's I think a lot of people missed it, which is why a sequel I think really caught a lot of people off guard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think because the only ones that I really haven't played looking back on it, there might be others, but the ones that come to mind right away, Tales of the Borderlands being one of them. The other one is the 3 actually. The other one's the Game of the Thrones one that no one acknowledged, the Telltale Game of Thrones, and then the Telltale's Guardians of the Galaxy. I haven't played that one either. So those three I know for a fact I haven't played, but basically everything else, Wolf Among Us, all the Walking Deads, the Batmans, including the Walking Dead spin-offs, like the Michonne, sorry, and I'm sure there's maybe a few others that I'm missing. I've basically played them all, and they're all fantastic. I mean, they have some of the best writing you'll see in any video game ever. I mean, really, that team is just so talented when it comes to creating stories that are so engaging and thoughtful. Really, they're just incredible stories.
Yeah, Tales from the Borderlands, I would probably... It feels like a fever dream, honestly. Like, it is just... You're going from just absolutely just ridiculous just dialogue and plot scenarios to just, like, crazy set pieces and, like, just super gory, just combat, and it's all just... I mean, if that's your thing, I would recommend it. What about you, Louise? Any interest in new Tales from the Borderlands?
Actually, no, I don't. I don't know anything about the series. I never play. I was watching the trailer here, and what I was going to comment is that the visual looks pretty good. It looks like a nice evolution of the previous one. I should play those games because I love games with story, games with choices, story-focused stuff, and things like that. But I never got to play one of them. So yeah, not a lot to add here.
Yeah, if you're considering it, like one of the things with these games is you really don't have to have a lot of knowledge from like the mainline Borderlands games. They do kind of stand on their own. They do a good job introducing you to like the lore of the universe, and
Oh, that's nice.
they actually have more story beats overall, I'd say, than like the mainline Borderlands games, at least the first two. So it might be a good. I think if you enjoy those games, it might kind of pique your interest in the series. I am curious to see how the Switch version will run because they were showing off a lot of
yeah.
a lot of footage from. This isn't also. I don't believe this game is a Telltale game. I think the original one was for sure, and Telltale is back in business now. But as far as I'm aware, this is a game being developed like by Gearbox.
Oh, that's interesting.
The original
Yeah,
developers.
that's interesting. Right.
So, what about you, Nicolas? Any interest in this game?
I'm mostly in the same camp as Louise. I don't have much experience with the Borderlands as a franchise, and also I have not really played a Telltale game myself. I've only watched a couple of playthroughs online, so this isn't really something for me personally. It looked good, for what I can say. I mean, it has a nice style. It's nice that the actual style of the game is very much in like that Borderlands aesthetic. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people are really excited about this finally being announced and happy for them.
Yeah. No, that's so okay. Well, if that's the case, let me throw some other games your guys' way. That this may be more of interest. It's smaller games, so maybe not, but hopefully we find something here for you guys. So moving out to this was shown off during the actual Gamescom opening night live stream. Kind of moving out kind of came out around the same time as Overcooked, maybe a little bit after, and similar kind of concept. Like you're all working together or kind of like somewhat competing, but mostly trying to help. And but it's all about like instead of cooking, it's all about like moving furniture, which is interesting because I don't like moving furniture. But
I don't think anybody does. Actually, if I'm not mistaken, it's actually on the top 5 most stressful things like in life. That's like when they made a list.
I believe
of just,
it.
like, yeah, like just scientifically, like when they just collected all this data, and for years and years, and moving like furniture is literally one of the top stressful things you can do in your life. So
that's funny. And they also like wedged this game in between like some horror game reveals, like and they showed off this one like not long after they were showing off like the Callisto Protocol, which I'd imagine would also be a very stressful situation. So
yeah, absolutely.
It fits right in.
It's the same stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just as stressful, I promise.
I am. Well, I was gonna say, I personally don't play like a ton of these types of like party games. Kara and I like we enjoy playing. Kara's my lovely fiance. We like playing like some multiplayer games together, but I picture us playing something like this, and I think we'd mostly end up yelling at each other, and I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing. So.
Yeah, I like those kind of games. I think Overcooked is probably the best one. It's just so chaotic. And I remember when I saw the first one of Moving Out being announced, and I was like, "Oh, this is probably really really fun." And I noticed that it was a similar concept, but actually playing the game, I didn't have that much fun like I was expecting. I don't know if it was the controls or just the act of carrying those things was not that fun to do.
Yeah, I was in the same boat. Yeah.
Yeah, it was not. I was expecting a similar experience to Overcooked, but it wasn't like that. I'm not sure if they are going to do a lot to change it. I see that the level design is going to get a little bit more crazy, and that's the online stuff. But overall, the core gameplay, it was not that fun to play. I tried to play with my brother, and yeah, we did not go a lot far with the game.
Yeah, these definitely seem like short burst type of games. Like if it is your thing,
Yeah.
they're not the kind of thing where I think most people will sink like dozens of hours into. But
Yeah, I think the thing that stood out to me is that wasn't the original like exclusive to either like Apple or Amazon Luna or something? Like that's where it was first announced and first playable.
I don't think so. I think it's pretty much everywhere.
Well, I think it is everywhere now. But I thought I remembered
see.
it being first announced on like either Amazon Luna, like their cloud streaming service,
Stadia,
or
maybe.
Wow.
like maybe Apple Arcade, like something weird where it was like, okay, well, I guess this is them trying to have their own Overcooked to like draw people to the service.
It's a really Switch game, right? It's the classic Switch experience.
It fits Switch really well. Personally, I have not tried it, but I think as it is, if I was going to try something like this, I would probably go for Overcooked first because I haven't really played that yet with like any friends or whatnot. So, I was not aware that the game was apparently very representative of moving furniture in terms of how fun it is.
You
so
mean no fun at all?
Yeah. Hopefully, this one will be better in that regard, I guess.
Yeah. Or it's just gonna scare people away from ever moving. So that was one of the indie games we got. We also got Teslagrad 2. This one I was pretty surprised on. I haven't thought about. So Teslagrad was a puzzle platformer that came out. Gosh, I don't even know. It's been a while at this point. This game came out on the Wii U, so that should give you some context right there. Which I mean I remember it. I heard some good things about it, but I didn't hear anything like mind blowing. But again, like clearly it's one of like those games that like it must have done well enough to do a sequel.
Yeah, I think it had just sort of it was very niche, but it had like a very loyal following because I played it on Vita, and I found myself eventually getting addicted to it because I thought the puzzles were absolutely fantastic. But I eventually, well, I didn't, but I tried to get the platinum, and unfortunately, I just never got around to doing it. But yeah, no, I played that game years and years ago. It's a fantastic puzzle platformer, kind of on the it mixes a lot of elements of the more classic ones that came around that time, like Braid. You see a lot of influence from Braid in Teslagrad, but yeah, I mean ultimately it was a really great game to those that really love puzzle games. A little on the difficult side, but definitely good, but definitely one of the last games I probably would have thought of, especially with how long ago it's been, since it originally came out, that, very surprised to hear about a sequel, but also, equally as excited.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to me it kind of feels like one of those like of the era games, like back when we have a ton of indie games nowadays, like more than anyone could realistically play in a lifetime. But Teslagrad kind of came out. There were still a lot of indie games back in 2013, but I mean, nowhere near the level where we're at today. And so I think people who liked puzzle platformers gravitated towards it a lot because it was one of the better releases of that time period.
Well, that one, it was definitely like a golden era too, because like I mentioned earlier with Braid, and then you had Teslagrad, and then I think around that time was also A Boy and His Blob, if you guys remember that game. Yeah. So that game was pretty popular as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nicolas, what were you gonna say? You've got some thoughts about this game?
Yeah, so this is one I actually am interested in. I never played the original Teslagrad, but I've heard a lot of good things about it, so I was planning to get to it eventually. And just hearing about the sequel and how excited that's made certain people online and some of my friends has definitely kind of renewed my interest in trying out the game. So I'll probably try out the first game at some point soon. I think it had a release on Switch, so I'll probably check it out there, and I'll probably end up watching what happens with the sequel a little bit closer now too.
There you go. We got a new Teslagrad fan here.
The game looks really good, right? Their style was already nice in the first one, but I think this is an interesting upgrade with the female protagonists and more colorful places. But in general, I agree with almost everything that you guys said. I never played the first one, but I remember during the Wii U era, this was kind of one of the indie games that received some attention at the time. For people who had Wii U, I think we know that during that time, we didn't had a lot of games coming out, so almost every single game on the eShop received a reasonable amount of attention just because it was a new game or something to look at it. And I think this was one of the indies at the time, like together with Shovel Knight and other great games that received a nice amount of attention. I never got to play it, but yeah, this new one made me more interested in the whole series.
All right, one more game I want to hit on kind of quickly here. This one I mostly want to mention just because it's just an interesting scenario. So towards the earlier start of the Switch's life, there were a couple games announced in the Fear Effect series, and for those who don't know, I don't blame you. Fear Effect is a fairly, I wouldn't say it's like niche, but it's not super well known. They were kind of like action stealth games. The first one came out way back on the PS1, so that should give you a sense. So it was one of those franchises that kind of had its fans, but kind of faded into obscurity. But it was back in like 2017 or 2018 that Square Enix announced that there was a new Fear Effect game coming out called Fear Effect Sedna, and that one did release to mixed reviews. I played it. I thought it was okay. But they also announced like a new remake basically of the original Fear Effect. And that was in like 2018. We haven't heard anything about that game since then. Like it pretty much fell off the face of the earth. And but all of a sudden last week we got a little glimpse of it. We got a little glimpse of gameplay of all things. And I think a lot of people just kind of assumed this game was vaporware, but they've clearly done a lot of work. I mean, so the original Fear Effect was almost kind of like a Resident Evil style, like from that kind of perspective. And they've really like modernized it into, kind of like I don't want to call it an indie game, but it's kind of targeting that, like a smaller scope third-person shooter. They've given it total like cel-shaded graphics, and I think it looks great actually.
I think it looks way better than the last one. Just the art style in general.
Yeah, it's a pretty different game from Fear Effect Sedna. Which did any of you guys play that one?
I always heard
attempted.
about the series but never played.
Yeah, I think that's pretty commonplace. But I'm definitely interested in checking out this remake. It's just we don't get like these weird. I mean, we've been seeing more of it lately, but anytime like a somewhat obscure franchise comes back, I'm always curious at the very least.
Yeah,
All right,
I'm always
well,
interested in it. I think Fear Effect. It's like you were saying, right? It's like it's not necessarily niche, but it's not exactly well known either. I think the game gets around enough that people who, are invested into smaller titles like these probably have heard of it. But I feel like not much have actually taken the leap to actually play it. Fear Effect Sedna, unfortunately, though, just had just so many underlying issues that it just ultimately wasn't enjoyable for me. And but I see that statement echoed in a lot of places. Like if you go to Steam, the reviews aren't particularly good. So yeah, but I'm hoping for a positive outlook for this new one.
Yeah. Well, that about covers all the games I wanted to talk about that were kind of shown off adjacent to Gamescom. But I did want to quickly mention we did get a release date for Sonic Frontiers. That game is coming out in November 8th. So not too far away. They have not delayed it yet, despite what some people want them to do.
They are very adamant in saying that they are absolutely not delaying it, which, depending on your perspective, is either great or really not ideal.
It's funny. It's funny.
Yeah. Well, stay tuned because I'll be reviewing that game. So we'll get some impressions out there at some point around that time. I don't know how big of a game it's going to be, but I'm curious to see.
They said I think they said very big, like 30 hours. I'm not sure, but the director said something around that. He said that it will be the biggest Sonic game, so not so fast, yeah.
I believe it. I believe it. And then we also got a release date for Return to Monkey Island, which is the new Monkey Island game from Ron Gilbert. Yeah, that's not really my personal genre, but a lot of folks are excited about it. So yeah, that one is coming out in September. So just around the corner, September 19th to be exact. All right, two more stories before we get into our last segment. This one had some folks riled up. For those of you who play PC games are probably familiar with the name Denuvo. They are a DRM, a digital rights management software company. And essentially what that means, for those who aren't familiar, is this is software that developers can opt into to kind of include in their games that basically acts as a form of copyright protection to keep the games from being distributed illegally. And it's a little bit controversial in the PC world because people have found evidence in various games that when this DRM software is present, that it can actually make games run worse. This was the case with some examples that come to mind are like the Doom games, Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal. I remember hearing about it then. People were getting substantially better performance once it was removed. So there's been some controversies around it in the past. But the news that came out this last week was that this software is being made available to Switch developers. Companies that want to better protect their Switch games from piracy can, pay money and include this software in here. I don't have a ton of experience with this software. I mean, I'm sure I've played games that have it baked in. I've never really noticed it personally. I would hope it, at this point that they have, optimized it enough to not affect Switch games, but I feel like Switch games, I am a little bit nervous, I will say, because Switch games have such little room to, increase performance. You got what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. A lot of Switch games are kind of already pushing the hardware, as far as they can. So I do wonder, if PCs are struggling with this, I wonder if it will affect Switch games.
Yeah, I mean, that's only going to be if developers choose to implement it. Which is kind of the
course.
thing here is, it's a bit of an odd situation because this isn't like Nintendo went out of the way to be like, hey, we want to include Denuvo in our games, please, develop for us. This was kind of... It seems to be that they took the initiative to be like, hey, we want to try and do this, and Nintendo was just like, okay, fine, you can do it. Give you the dev kit for it, whatnot, and whatever. But it's very much going to be up to individual developers to choose whether this is something to implement, and I just don't really see it. I mean, the Switch doesn't really have a huge problem with piracy. Obviously it exists. There are Switch emulators that people use to pirate games, but it's nowhere near the widespread issue that it was with, say, the DS or the PSP or whatnot. I just don't know how much this is realistically going to affect things, because I don't know who this is really for. Because I don't think...
I've heard that the Switch piracy scene is fairly large and fairly public. I mean, you can go on Reddit and find people, freely sharing, cracked copies of games. And I'm not going to say exactly where, but, it's definitely out there. And I mean, I don't know.
If you look
it's always hard to
enough,
gauge this kind of problem.
if you look hard enough, I feel like you can find that for most systems. And I mean, yes, you're right that the emulators for Switch definitely are pretty optimized. They can work. They can they can handle things pretty well. But like, I think if this was such a significant issue, if this was such a significant issue that it would require really hard cracking down on by implementing Denuvo, this is something that Nintendo would definitely have already done, right? They are very much anti-piracy in that regard.
Oh,
and
for
if
sure,
it was really a huge issue, I think they would have addressed it in their own way, which they arguably did by doing certain revisions to the Switch software and the Switch hardware. So I don't.
That's true.
Yeah, I just don't
Actually,
think.
kind of an interesting note on that. Like, so you guys remember when Nintendo released that version of the Switch in like, I want to say like 2018 or 2019, that was basically the same, but had a better battery.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, part of the reason for that, it came out not too long ago, was because they actually did it to patch like a hardware vulnerability that was letting people pirate Switch games more easily. So that was kind of their way of cracking down.
Here in Brazil, the pirate situation it is not the same, as Nicolas said, to the Wii, the DS, the PS2. Oh my God. Like in the PS2 era, I didn't even know that original games actually existed because it was so common to see piracy here in Brazil. But
especially with Dreamcast too. A lot of people, you could just burn a DVD and then there you go.
Yeah,
You
it
could
was
play it on your
very
Dreamcast.
simple. So in the streets, people would be selling games here in Brazil. Now on the Switch, video games still is super expensive here in Brazil. Like a AAA Switch game costs a third of the minimum wage, so it's almost a luxury for a lot of people to buy games. And because of that, the Nintendo Switch V1, the original model from 2017, usually you'll find that's costing more here in Brazil because a lot of people are looking for the V1. And it is easily widespread. A lot of people here have a Switch with, it's kind of crazy. I already saw a Switch like that, and you can access the fake store, the fake eShop, and you can download literally any Switch game from the Switch. It is pretty crazy how easy it is on the Switch V1. I'm not sure how it works on the OLED on the Switch V2. I think it will be way more complex to do anything with those consoles. But it is kind of a problem, even though it is not at the same level of the Wii during the Wii era on the DS. I think it was the last time that Nintendo had real issues with that kind of stuff. But it's weird, as Nicolas said, it's weird to see Nintendo not related to that. And I'm not sure what Denuvo can actually make from a software perspective to avoid stuff like that. I think they became really famous on the Sonic community. I know that the PC versions of Sonic games usually have Denuvo, and the community kinda hates the company because it brings some other unexpected issues. So I don't know. I don't see a lot of publishers actually getting into that boat. Maybe we'll see Sega with the new Sonic Frontier or something that. But I have the same worries as Nick to if this will actually affect the game in some form, or the performance of the game, if it is something that. But who knows? They are saying that it is not going to affect. It's hard to predict.
Yeah.
For the record, I do have direct experience with it because Monster Hunter World on PC had Denuvo implemented at some point in the middle of its life cycle, and I wasn't aware of that initially. But I definitely felt at some point in the middle of playing it, just randomly, suddenly my performance dropped massively. I went from being able to play the game reliably at 30 frames per second to struggling to hit a consistent 20. Oof. And I just assumed at the time, like, oh, maybe, it was an update, or maybe like my PC needs to be cleaned, like I gotta apply some new like heating pads, coolant, whatever, or like clean the fans. No, I learned afterwards. Actually, the update added Denuvo to it, and that is what just screwed everything over, and suddenly the game was borderline unplayable. So
yeah, that's bad.
Yeah, they did remove it for Monster Hunter World specifically, which is nice. But just to say, like, it has a definite impact Obviously, that doesn't carry over to what impact it might have for a Switch game, but it's not a good look. They're definitely not a beloved company.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, I think one of the reasons why it impacts performance so much also is that, it's because it is making sure that you have a legitimate copy and it's trying to, avoid piracy from happening. It's constantly basically doing DRM checks. So because of that, it has another process happening in the background while you're playing the game. So there's like this multi-layered, processing sort of techniques that are happening that can really impact performance, and that's why it's basically constantly pinging, the internet to make sure that, hey, are we good to go? Yes, okay. And then 2 seconds later, are we good to go? Yes, okay. And then it just rinse and repeat, and that's one of the biggest issues with the Denuvo in general. I mean, I get they want to avoid piracy, and that's why it's implemented, but there's got to be another solution other than that. And even then, it doesn't work that well. It doesn't work that because when Doom Eternal came out, yes, it had Denuvo, but people were still pirating and cracking that because there was a way to crack it by
They always find a way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's always a way. There's always a way. So
and-
ultimately, you're just fanning the flames here. That's all.
I think the perspective
Yeah.
is
Well,
basically it just punishes consumers that buy the game legitimately because they're the ones affected by it. Well, pirates will still find a way to pirate it, whether that's
and
like
funny enough,
fully
they'll
true.
have the better performance.
Yeah, but like it's not great.
Yeah, and the other side of it too is like, like we're aware of this kind of thing, right? But little 10-year-old Timmy sitting over there playing his new copy of
Or Timmy.
whatever game has Denuvo in it. Yeah, he's not gonna know. He's just gonna be like, oh, my game is stuttering a lot. But I don't think the average consumer. Yeah,
Pokemon Denuvo.
there you go.
The new one this generation.
Yeah. But like it's one of those things that like the average consumer is not going to be aware of it or really care about. But people who are like really gung ho about getting the most out of their games. Well, first of all, you're probably not playing some of these big multi-plat games on Switch, anyways. But I guess my point is like it's. I think we already like kind of know how it's going to play out. But I guess we'll see. Hopefully they've optimized it and it won't be as bad as everyone thinks.
Yeah.
All right. One more topic I want to talk about here. This one is just really exciting to me. I think I said it earlier, is like the highlight of my week. Our good friend Masahiro Sakurai, he for those who aren't familiar, like just kind of like the mastermind behind like Smash and Kirby and Kid Icarus Uprising. And
Small guy, you might have heard of him in passing.
Yeah, you might have heard of him. So he has well, let me give the full story here. He's been sharing out on like Twitter like ever since Smash Ultimate was first revealed. He's been sharing Smash Ultimate screenshots, just of like the various like characters doing silly poses, and they're great. There's just a little bit of joy in your Twitter sphere. But he announced all of a sudden, he was like, okay, I'm gonna stop doing this, but I have something new coming. Everyone was like, oh, what is it? And then he was like, then he revealed he's starting his own YouTube channel, and it's wonderful. It's a YouTube channel all about it's called Masahiro Sakurai on Creating Games, and it's just these like short little tidbit videos of him talking about like his philosophy between like how he designs his games and his creative process and things like that, and it's super cool, man. I've been enjoying it.
Yeah, it's
Sakurai...
honestly fun. It's really fun to see because he approaches it from both a more professional standpoint, as in like, hey, if you want to develop a game, you need to add hit stop to certain animations, and he also does it from a more casual perspective, where even as an outside viewer, you can still understand the concepts presented. It's also just fun to see him talk more. Like back when he did the Smash Presents the Smash Presents videos, everyone would always say like I could listen to this guy talk about anything for like several hours on end. He's finally putting that to work, so
He's really charismatic.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, very much, very much.
Yeah, and his channel is not like, this is not a like sponsored by Nintendo thing, but it's got very much that like Nintendo level charm to it. Like It's just like really just like adorable animations and just,
Yeah,
like,
it's
kinda-
really well made. Like the animations and the stuff, it's great, and he has those inside information about games that we never heard before. It's just it just feels like he's really excited about it. How can a human being be so good? I mean, man, he's not even monetizing the channel.
Yeah.
And
No.
if you
Yeah, it's
now here's
crazy, I know.
something: if you get an ad watching a Sakurai video, it's because YouTube puts an ad, and that money is going to YouTube. In that case, I would even prefer Sakurai to actually monetize the video because I prefer that money going to
Oh, of
him.
course. Yeah, of course.
he actually said he's basically paying for this out of his own pocket, and he said like with every video I make, I'm losing more money, but I want to do it anyways, which is just like that's just wonderful. Yeah. Like thank you, Sakurai.
Yeah, but I mean, let's be honest though. I'm sure with decades of royalties from Smash Brothers, he can afford it.
Yeah,
Oh, for
Let's be
sure,
honest,
for
so,
sure.
yeah.
I think he's good.
I'm just waiting for the classic, like,
struggling.
I just want a big thumbnail with Sakurai making a reaction face, and then just, is Ridley too big? Big red arrow pointing at Ridley. Like,
That would be awesome.
Jaw dropped, hands on his face, in shock.
Oh man.
I'm waiting for the hey
Playing
guys,
Five
this
Nights at
video is
Freddy's.
sponsored by Squarespace. Coming from Sakurai.
Can you
Oh my
imagine?
God, can you imagine?
I've worked on Smash Brothers, but have you heard of Raid Shadow Legends?
Oh, yeah,
that-
he has
that-
the
that would be
luxury of
something. But
avoiding
just
all
the
this-
fact
it's all
that
cliche.
he's translating the video to English is awesome because I was worried that he would be make in Japanese, which would be understandable, but everything is in English. So great.
Yeah, it's the same day release, too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And on top of that, Hideo Kojima, he has a podcast now.
So that was
yeah,
at
man.
Brain
Gamescom.
structure. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like this is the time, man. If you guys want insights into the minds of these auteurs, you know.
Well, tours for sure. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was a great
It's
time to
great.
be
It's
alive.
great.
All right, well, that wraps up our news for the week. But before we go, we're going to jump into our classic closing segment, which is what has everyone been playing lately? Nicolas, let's start with you. What have you been playing this
Okay,
week?
I promise next week I'll have something different to say.
There we go.
Okay,
I imagine a big space right
Moving on.
This is a problem, okay?
He already finished the game.
Yeah, you.
Yeah.
I've been doing
Wait, you
post
finished the
game.
game and you're... Oh, no.
It's not my fault.
can hear it in his voice.
What even is... I never really understood that term post-game. Like, it's all just in the game. Like post-game implies, like,
yeah.
it's like...
True, I suppose. I guess post story would be more accurate.
Yeah, post story.
Okay.
Yeah.
Post-campaign.
Yeah.
So you're spending... Let me guess. You're spending your hours, like, collecting various herbs to, like, check the side quests off your list?
No, I already did all the side quests several days ago. Instead, I'm just farming monsters for materials. It's totally different.
Totally different. All right. Glad we cleared that up.
Oh man.
All right. Well, but you did play the Splatfest, so
Yes,
you know,
that-
I'll give you
Technically
some
something else.
credit. Technically something else. All right. What about you, Louise? What have you been jumping into?
So yeah.
Oh, I can hear just Nick's voice again.
I guess you guys have a good reason, right? Because there's
He has an
you guys are
excuse,
kinda
okay?
doing a big Splatoon 3 spoiler cast still in the cards.
I think I'm very close to the end. I think I'm actually I'm at the door of the final boss. I'm just doing all the side quest stuff before I actually finish the game. And to be honest, I did not play a lot of video games this week. So when I had the time, I wanted to play Xenoblade. I also played the Splatfest a little bit, and yeah, but that's basically it.
All right. What about you, Dennis? What have you been jumping into this week?
Yeah, so I've kind of been going back and forth between two games. One of them being Cult of the Lamb, which, you know, if you guys haven't played that yet, I mean, it's just this. First of all, the art style is just super cute, right? And it's just he just plays this little lamb, that is running its own cult, basically. But it's more in depth than that, right? This was the last lamb to ever exist, and they were going to sacrifice it, as a typical sacrificial lamb would be. But because it was the last one, they were like, oh, this way, since it was the last one, there's no way we can summon Satan ever again after this, right? However, what ended up happening was. Yeah, so what ended up happening was Satan actually came to the aid of this lamb, but because Satan's kind of in this, in these chains or whatever, and being put away in purgatory, he was like, I'm gonna give you my powers. Basically, you're the last lamb. Go and build a cult following, and
as one does.
Spread, as one does, and spread the good word of the Lord, I suppose. So, yeah. So, but yeah, it's super cute, and it has a nice balance, as we were talking about earlier, actually, and I wanted to mention it, but I figured I'd mention it here at the end, where it actually has a really nice balance of the farming elements and the, I don't really want to call it RPG elements, because it's not an RPG, it's more of a roguelite dungeon crawler, akin to Hades, really, and but it balances it so well, and you never really feel forced to do one or the other. You can spend as much time as you want in the farming areas. I mean, eventually you're going to feel the need to go back to the dungeon just to, progress through the story and get more followers and so on and so forth. But yeah, it's like surprisingly in depth, because the more you play, you can actually unlock other areas. At first, I was just under the impression that you just had your little village, and then you just had the dungeons that you went through. But no, you actually have a map. You can go to various other territories as well. Not necessarily combat territories, but just other areas like, you can visit another character's house, for example, that just happens to live in a different part of the map. You can go to, just a small little shack. You can go over to a port and do some fishing. It's really, really cool.
People kind of described it as like a darker version of Animal Crossing. Would you say that's accurate?
So to a degree, yeah. There's definitely elements there that definitely will give you vibes of it. You don't necessarily you can build quote unquote homes for the followers that you bring in. However, they're not people you're going to build necessarily an attachment to, because eventually you are going to have to sacrifice them. So, but the more loyal they are to you, which can be done in a variety of ways, whether it's, by giving them gifts or just by really attending to their needs. So, making sure they're being fed, making sure they have a nice place to sleep in, so on and so forth. Then they actually don't mind. They're like, yeah, please take my soul, and it's just, but it's done in a really cute way. I know this sounds like morbid, but when you see it and you actually play through it, it's actually really, really cute. I would say the best way to compare this to is, I don't know if you guys remember, this happened a long time ago, but Happy Tree Friends. Do you remember Happy Tree Friends?
I remember.
At all?
I do.
Yeah. So
that is a crevice
cute.
in my brain I have not ventured into in like a decade.
Right, exactly. But a lot of vibes from that, right? Where like on the surface, looks cute, looks adorable, looks like it might even be made for kids, right? But then once you actually watch it, oh no,
oh no,
oh no, that just put a big M rating on that.
Whenever I like hear about like games like this, I'm just like, you guys remember like back in the 3DS and Wii U era, they were trying to get Binding of Isaac released on Nintendo platforms, and Nintendo was just like, no, like we can't do it. Like this game is too dark, too mature for our audiences. Let's stay away from religious themes. And now we're just like, yeah, you want to like slaughter your innocent animal friends in a cult? Sure, Nintendo will let you do that.
And Nintendo nowadays is like, if you see the amounts of hentai games that have on the eShop, it's
I was gonna say. I mean, really, the Binding of Isaac is the least of their worries.
Yeah, they're just like, does the game open and function on Switch? Great.
It's basically that.
But yeah, Cult of the Lamb is super, super cute. I have not been playing that on Switch. I've been playing that on Xbox, because I got a really good deal on it on Xbox. But it's a great game.
Would that deal be Xbox Game Pass?
Actually, no. No. I just happened to get lucky and find a good deal on it. But yeah, no, it's not on Xbox Game Pass, unfortunately, which is also really weird, just because Devolver actually has a lot of their stuff on Game Pass. So this was actually really surprising that they didn't put this on Game Pass, because their last release was Trek to Yomi, and they had that on Game Pass. So really interesting why they didn't allow Game Pass to participate in this, but yeah, no, it's a fantastic game, and honestly, even though I'm playing on an Xbox, I can safely say this would be a phenomenal Switch game. So if you're interested, obviously pick it up on Switch. I think you'd have a great time, or your platform of choice. But I know since this is a Nintendo podcast, let me just promote the Switch really quick. But
Would be a great fit for a Nintendo if you're listening. Just some kind of like indie like subscription service, like that'd be super cool.
that would
Like
be really nice. Yeah.
like I don't think I know we're on a tangent here now. Thanks, sorry, but like okay, like we always talk about like, oh, should Nintendo like have a Game Pass competitor? And I can't see them ever doing like putting all their first party games on a service. But I could totally see them doing like oh, we're providing a service that will provide like a rotating selection of indie games or something.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean
something like this would be super cool for that.
Well, yeah, especially with like how much they love to do like promotion under the sort of umbrella of like Nindies, right? You could have like Nindies Plus or something like that. Nindies Max Plus
Ooh.
Ultimate, Deluxe Digital Gold,
Super.
whatever.
Expansion.
So
Yeah.
super. So don't forget new. New's got to actually be in the beginning. New Nindies Plus. So,
New
then it
Deluxe.
goes on.
Oh
Yeah.
my
For
god.
Nintendo Switch.
That's right.
Featuring
That's
new
right.
funky.
Oh.
Yeah, but no, that'd be a fantastic idea, actually. And honestly, truthfully, let's be honest. If you really want to give more value to a Nintendo Switch Online, at least the expansion pass portion of it, go ahead and throw that in there, man. Because then I would warrant that would warrant the price to me. Because I still don't think it's worth the price that it is with all the
Yeah.
even though it's been growing with the Nintendo 64
Not in the
content, I still
era.
don't think it's worth
Not in
it.
the era of the world we live in. Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. But like really quickly, yeah, that's I've been playing Cult of Lamb, and then on the side I've also been playing Doki Doki Literature Club. So you want to talk about mature rated games? But that one I have been playing on Switch, and that one's another game that also will, if you're not familiar with Doki Doki Literature Club, it will take you by surprise. I'm not going to go as in depth, but the original one was free on Steam, but now the game has gotten a complete overhaul, and with some extra content as well, and it's just has a plus at the end. Actually, speaking of subscription services. So Doki Doki Literature Club Plus, and that's it's $15. It's a great $15 that you'll spend, especially considering the original was overwhelmingly positive with God knows how many thousands and thousands of votes on Steam. So, but runs and looks great on Switch. Again, what you see at face value is not what you think it's going to be, because it looks like a cutesy little high school game about like 4 girls, but it is, I promise you it is not, because when the game starts out right away, it tells you right away, look, this game is extremely disturbing, so if you're sensitive to heavier material, or you're a child, please do not play this game because it gets brutal.
There are trigger warnings
it gets
for a
very,
reason.
very dark. Yes, exactly. And it tells you that even before all the logos pop up, like even before the publisher logos, the developer logos, all that, it tells you, like, the moment you press A to launch it, that's the first thing you see. That's a splash screen, basically.
Do you think it's do you think it's considering that the original game was free, do you think there's enough content in this new version to justify paying for it?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. But also, it's just a fantastic story in itself, and the fact that this was made by one guy.
That's true. Yeah.
It's really clever. It's really clever.
Yes, absolutely, and I love that sort of bait and switch mentality. But if you're familiar with something like Corpse Party, then you should get real comfortable with Doki Doki Literature Club. Again, not it looks very different from what you're gonna get, but I think that's what makes me enjoy it so much. Is it tricks you, it plays with you, because it kind of gives this overlapping sense of genres, but also like, hey, don't judge a book by its cover either, right? Just like Cult of the Lamb looks super cute, right? But it ends up being super demonic, right? So I'm sure, there's plenty of, super religious people who probably, saw this game who thought, oh, this is going to be great for my kid, and they started playing it. Oh no, oh no, absolutely not. Let's not give this to my child. So this will probably be the same thing with Doki Doki Literature Club. So, but yeah, so it's a fantastic game.
All right. Yeah, I've never played it. I am I was a little bit spoiled. Like I do kind of know like what the gimmick is, but I feel like it probably goes a lot deeper than what I know about. So someday I'll play it. Is what I tell myself.
Yeah. I mean,
every
even
week.
if you don't want to like try the plus version, again, you can still pretty much experience what is essentially the same story with the free version. So
Yeah.
honestly, no harm, no
I think
foul.
it
It will
would.
cost you nothing. Yeah.
Yeah. As far as me, I've been playing, and I'll have a review out soon. It might already be out by the time you're listening to this, but if not, it'll be out soon. I've been playing a Pac-Man World Repack,
Ooh.
the surprise remake of Pac-Man World. Yeah.
That one looks awesome.
I've been enjoying it for the most part. I did finish it. It's not a super long game. There's about 23 stages. Probably took me about 6 or 7 hours to get through. It's not a groundbreaking platformer by any means. It's pretty much what you'd expect for kind of a late 90s 3D platformer. It's actually, my first thoughts in playing it was it kind of plays similarly to Super Mario 3D Land, just in terms of like you're moving around in the 3D space, but you don't really have control of the camera. But going forward and backwards, and some things kind of like tucked just out of the side of the camera, so that's pretty cool. But I've been having a lot of fun with it. Like sometimes you just kind of need a game where you can just jump in and just have a good time and not have to think too much about it. And that's kind of what I was looking for, and it's been filling that gap pretty well.
Do you think it feels, in relation to the controls, it feels a little dated, or did they manage to update that?
No, I don't think it feels dated at all, actually.
Oh, great.
You can tell that they've put a substantial amount of work into making Pac-Man feel like modern in 3D. And there really wasn't a single point where I felt like I was wrestling with the controls. It felt really good to play, actually. The Switch version doesn't run as well as it does on other consoles. They're targeting like 30 frames per second, and it dips below that fairly frequently, but it was never to the point where I felt like I wasn't having fun playing the game, which is usually like my threshold for like what's acceptable. That's gonna be different for everyone, but
Does it look good at least, like on the Switch? Because I was thinking about picking it up on Xbox.
it looks really good. Yeah, it looks really
Okay,
sharp
good.
on this, even in handheld mode. Yeah, and I'd say the thing that I really enjoyed the most about it is just, I mean, obviously like it's a Pac-Man game, but like they do a good job at actually translating some of like the Pac-Man mechanics into like a 3D platformer, like more than I expected. So normal like enemies that you'll encounter, you can attack by like doing a butt bounce or doing like a spin roll like into them. But when you come across the ghosts, they're pretty much invincible unless you can figure out. You usually have to like solve a little environmental puzzle or like a little platforming challenge to collect like hit a switch or something, and then it pulls up like all like the Pac-Man dots and like the ones that turn you invincible and make the ghosts vulnerable. So once you collect that, Pac-Man turns giant, like just absolutely massive, like filling the entire screen, and just demolishes everything in his path. It's like it's really fun, actually.
Oh, that sounds great. I think there's a demo on the eShop, so I'll probably give it a try. It is not full price, right? I think it's like
No,
$30.
I think it's like 30.
Yeah, 30 bucks.
Yeah. It seems alright.
Which I
for
think
the
is
price.
reasonable. Yeah.
Yeah.
That seems good. Yeah.
Feels like the perfect price for this type of game. And there's some other content too. Like you can, if you do well in each of the stages, you can unlock like more traditional Pac-Man style stages, but in the new engine. So they're kind of like 3D Pac-Man levels, and they're cool. So yeah, I haven't finished my review yet, but I'd recommend it. It's a good game. Nothing earth-shattering, but solid recommendation for people who like that kind of thing.
Nice.
And I believe that wraps up our show. Thank you everyone so much for tuning in. This has been episode 23 of Nintendo Everything Refresh, and we really appreciate all of our repeated listeners and our new listeners alike. Thank you so much for checking us out. If you like what you have been listening to, please spread the word. Tell your friends, share us out on social media. We're on pretty much every podcast and media platform. If you're on YouTube, we're also over on Spotify and Audible and Google Podcasts and Stitcher and pretty much everything at this point. And we are offering direct downloads again. As of last week, there's now a more reliable way to do that. So check the description on YouTube for some details on that. But other than that, thank you so much. And we will be back at you next week with everything new and exciting in the world of Nintendo. See you guys later.